David Smith is a lecturer in American politics and foreign policy with the University of Sydney's US Studies Centre, and he joins me now. David Smith, you were sitting here before as we were chatting to Laura McFarlane, who was a person who was watching the race, cheering a friend on at the end. And she was mentioning that she saw people walking around with signs before the explosions saying Boston will burn. So I guess we were just discussing before the likelihood that this was some kind of terror attack, and we've heard from the police chief there, but there are all kinds of elements that this could involve.
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into the presence of those people, because any large event like that will attract fringe religious or political protesters. I think I've seen that same group at football games in the United States. It was really remarkable, though, the way that she described the fact that they were still talking to people 3 minutes after the blast had happened. So definitely taking their opportunities there. I think that Barack Obama has been very careful to emphasise not knowing who is responsible, and this is probably one of the reasons why he hasn't referred to it as a terrorist attack, because he doesn't want to refer to it as one until a political motivation has been established. And certainly there are any number of people, groups, who might have had a motivation to carry this out, and we just don't know which one it is.
One of the biggest attacks in the US was Timothy McVeigh, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, he was a very disaffected right-wing patriot, he called himself, and he targeted the Alfred F. Murrah building in Oklahoma City, which is a federal building that housed the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms. Now, the political sort of motive for that was clearly visible. He had a personal grudge against that particular government agency because of things that had been responsible for a few years earlier in Waco and Ruby Ridge. It's less obvious here what the political motivation would be. I mean, that was a federal building. Okay. That was a very politically symbolic target. In the same way, 9/11, there was a lot of symbolism associated with the Twin Towers about the domination of American capital and culture. This, it's really hard to see what political symbolism this has, other than just inflicting maximum terror on the population and killing as many people as you can opportunistically. So even if this was politically motivated, and as I said earlier, I think the coordination that's involved indicates there's a strong probability that it was, but it's unclear what the political symbolism is.
Just looking at some of this vision that we've seen through the morning and seeing the explosions themselves, are you surprised there weren't, at this stage, the death toll is 2 and that could well rise, but that the death toll was not more substantial because of the numbers of people that had gathered here and the size of the explosions?
Yeah, I think it's very surprising that the death toll isn't higher yet, although, as you say, unfortunately, it probably will rise. I mean, the first initial reports we heard about number of injuries were 23, and that's now well over 100, so it wouldn't be surprising if people died in emergency rooms as well. But it almost seems miraculous, actually, that more people haven't died so far.
How have the intelligence services improved since September 11? Because there was a lot of discussion afterwards and inquiries into the intelligence failures in the run-up to September 11. How more effective are those intelligence services now than they were 10 years ago?
Well, that's always a matter for debate. I mean, certainly there are a lot more of them now. They cast a much wider net. They have a far wider range of activities, and they do things now that people would have been very uncomfortable with prior to 9/11 in terms of intercepting communications. It's up for debate exactly how effective this entire apparatus has actually been. And there has not been an attack until this point on US soil, unless you count the Fort Hood massacre. So you can count that as a victory for intelligence, but we don't know whether there would have been an attack anyway. So it's very difficult for us to to assess this. Certainly, the Department of Homeland Security is now a massive bureaucracy, one of the biggest in the United States. There was a report from the Washington Post a couple of years ago that mentioned the fact that now 2 million Americans have top secret clearance in the intelligence agencies. So it's certainly a much, much bigger intelligence operation now, but there's really no way of knowing whether it is more effective. You could probably argue that no matter how effective it is and no matter how big it is, they can never prevent something like this, which is an incredibly unexpected target, may well have been carried out by people that the Department of Homeland Security had no idea about. But in a country as big and abundant and diverse as the United States, there are always going to be opportunities for people who want to inflict damage in this way.
Okay, David Smith, thanks for that analysis. Stick there and we'll talk to you again soon.